Most parents think that their child has a behavioural problem, but what if it's actually a regulation problem? Hi, my name's Jayne and I'm a breathwork coach specialising specifically with the nervous system, and I help parents raise emotionally secure, connected children. For many years I've been working in the corporate space, teaching executive CEOs how to regulate their nervous systems, and the one thing that I've really noticed is that there's no difference between a CEO closing a $20 million deal and a parent dealing with their toddler's meltdown. The nervous system is just overwhelmed and it doesn't know how to respond. So as parents, we're not actually given the toolbook or told this is how to raise your children, this is how to deal with meltdowns. I'm a mum myself, I've got two beautiful children, one 5-year-old and one 3-year-old, and this is something that I've learnt to deal with and learnt to cope and found amazing strategies to assist them when they're having their meltdowns, which happens very regularly, as most parents would know. So in this video, I want to show you a completely different way to understand your child's behaviour. So one that creates connection instead of the power struggles that we hear of far too often. So co-regulation definitely doesn't mean fixing your child or just stopping the emotion. It means becoming the steady presence that their nervous system can settle against. So this is why telling your child to calm down or use your words doesn't often work in that moment. They really need their body to feel safe before they can understand the logic. So this was a really big learning curve for me as a parent. I've had businesses and staff for 20 years. Never once did I lose it with my staff or find myself getting so worked up. I was really centered and grounded and emotionally controlled, always in the workplace, and any of my staff can attest to that. Also with my clients too, however frustrating they may have been on some occasions. Having children was a complete game changer. That brought out parts of me I didn't even know existed, and feelings of frustration, emotion and exhaustion. A lot of parents, you would understand with young kids, you're tired, you're sleep deprived, it can just feel so overwhelming and you don't know where to turn to. So for me, breath was one of the biggest ways to learn to self-regulate again myself when dealing, because what that does when dealing with the kids' meltdowns, because what that does, it actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system in the autonomic nervous system, known as the rest and digest state. So we're actually having that physiological effect of calming ourselves down when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling upset, when we're feeling angry or frustrated. And all it can take is a few easy, gentle breathing techniques to get you into a place where then you can co-regulate with your little one. Because if you're not feeling that calm space, they're going to pick up and they're not going to be able to respond accordingly, and the meltdown will continue and potentially escalate. So once I understood this, then everything shifted. It became a lot easier. I kept going back to my breath, and if I couldn't do it in the moment, I would tell them, make sure they're safe in their safe space. Okay, mummy's just going to sit over here. I'm just going to take a moment just to breathe. I would walk over, remove myself just slightly so I could still see them. They were safe. Breathe, calm myself down, and then come back and then be able to co-regulate. And as I mentioned earlier, I've got two children that have very different ways of responding. My daughter is very language-based and my son needs a lot of affection and touch and cuddles. So that's one of his regulation languages that he really needs. If he's having a meltdown, sometimes just picking him up and cuddling him just stops. Other times, my husband has sat down, and when he's feeling really checked out, he's actually just sat on the couch next to him, closed his eyes, just did some breathing, and under 40 seconds, our little son, 3 years old, climbs onto his lap, gives him a cuddle. And that's just purely picking up on those mirror neurons and that co-regulation. So one of the biggest shifts for me, both professionally and personally, was understanding this, that behaviour is communication. It's not defiance. Young children don't yet have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that controls emotion and logic and regulation. So when children are born, they cannot actually self-regulate. They regulate through us. And that's things like holding your child, comforting them, being around them, and sharing that energy space, because they have the mirror neurons which picks up that co-regulation. So what we're doing is we're developing co-regulation with our child, and as they grow older, to be able to foster and learn to self-regulate. Now, as adults, a lot of us weren't taught to self-regulate as we matured. So the good news is that you can still learn this today, and it's a very simple, easy process. Now, children also regulate in very different ways. No child is the same, and there are 5 core ways of regulation, which I'll go into in another video, but your children have different needs, different desires, and there are definitely different ways to help them manage their emotions and their stress responses. So before children can regulate, they really need to learn to regulate through us. So they borrow our calm, so to speak. You can't fake it with kids. As you parents would really know, you can't sit there and think, great, let's just smile and be all relaxed, but internally feeling stressed, feeling angry, feeling frustrated, it's just not going to work. So one of the biggest things is to learn to self-regulate, to be the presence that they need to come out of when they're melting down. Because if you're talking and trying to tell them stop doing this, or quit that behaviour now, or this is unacceptable, that's just overwhelming and overstimulating that part of the prefrontal cortex. They don't have the ability to understand your logic, and if anything, it's actually making it worse. So sometimes words are not necessary, just your presence and your calmness is what really matters the most. So just know, parents, that you are doing a great job, and this work isn't about being calm all the time. It's about noticing when your own system is tipping over the edge and going into that overwhelmed state, and then learning to meet that moment differently and be able to bring yourself back. Because when we do that, our children feel it, and we don't even need to say a word. So over the coming weeks, I am going to be sharing more about co-regulation, more about the 5 regulation languages that your child will fall into. We all have our primary and our secondary regulation language, emotional safety, and how we can now support our children to the best that we can, whilst also supporting ourselves and without losing ourselves in the process of doing so. So just remember, you are not failing. You're learning something that most of us were never taught, but there are tools out there, there's strategies, there's techniques, and there's an understanding that we can develop, we can embody, and we can raise the next generation of children to be emotionally secure and connected to us. And just visualize what that's going to be like in their lives as adults, and navigating different scenarios in the workforce, with relationships. If they have those tools from a very young age, they're going to have a very different upbringing and outlook on life to potentially what we were told or the way we were raised. So just know, by being here, by learning, you're doing an amazing job. Good on you, and I'll be back next week with another video. Thank you.